Yes, it's sermon time. And we are looking at the Book of Ruth. So if you want to look at your Bibles, it's the 8th book of the Old Testament. We go through from Genesis to Deuteronomy, the Pentateuch. Then we've gone to Joshua, Judges. Then it's the Book of Ruth, just before the last judge of Israel's book, which was the 1 Samuel. So it's between Judges and 1 Samuel. As some of you are aware, I'm doing an ACFE course, the Amazing Facts, down in Melbourne. And we've been encouraged that when we're sharing about the Bible, about stories, it's a really good idea to explain a little bit about the context. Now, in the case of Ruth, we know that it's in the time of Judges, but exactly when? Well, some scholars, when I was researching this, could be as early as 1100 BC, could be as late as 900 BC. So 1000 BC seems about halfway. So that means about 1,000 years before Jesus walked the earth. Where? Well, we're starting off, first of all, very briefly in Bethlehem, which is part where Jesus was born, if you'll remember that. And then down to Moab, and then back to Bethlehem. Who? Naomi, Ruth and Boaz are our main characters. What relevance this may have for us today. Naomi was an Israelite. She has a long lineage all the way back to Abraham. So she's like us today, those of us who have had, well, we don't know when we learnt to become Christians. Great, go on, grandparents have been Christians, and it's been right through. Ruth, well, she's like those of us who we didn't really come from a Christian background. We might have come from an atheist background or an animist or some other religion. We may not have even expressed any particular faith. So she's like the foreigner, and yet God loves her very much, and he loves us very much too. Boaz. He is like the people who have one mother and one father from different backgrounds. In this particular case, the mother is Rahab from Jericho. Rahab was one of the very, very few people in Jericho who were saved when the walls came tumbling down. She wanted to follow the one true God of heaven. When she went to Israel and they settled in the promised land, she married a man called Salmon, who, like Naomi, could go back very far in his lineage in faith. Their son, or one of their sons, was called Boaz. So some of us might be like that too. We've got one parent who comes from a very long line of believers and one parent who is very new in the faith. Maybe they're the first one in their family. And why is this important to know about? Why is Ruth important to know about? Because she's actually going to be continuing the Messianic line, which is pretty important, I think you'll agree, as we heard in the children's story. Thank you, Brendan. And thank you, by the way, to all the worship team. What we know about Moab. Well, Moab was favoured because it was related to Israel via Abraham. Moab was actually Abraham's nephew Lot's child. They refused Moses' entry on the way to the promised land. Balaam was asked to curse by the king of Moab, Balak. Balaam was asked to curse the children of Israel, and he said, no, they're God's people, I can't curse them. Balak said, oh, but I'll give you lots of riches. Oh, self-control, Brendan. Oh, boy. Balaam held out for a little while, but then King Balak came back with even more. Oh, says Balaam, I'll go and talk to God, but really in his heart he wanted to go and get those riches. And God says to him, well, if these conditions are met, then you can go. And Balaam made sure that those conditions were met. This is where we have the story in Numbers about a talking donkey. Now, if that didn't get Balaam's attention, I don't know what is, but would. But the text doesn't say that he was very surprised. He just has a conversation with his donkey. And then when everything is finished, God says to have nothing to do with Moab, although he does say at first don't fight them, but we get the idea that they're not to do any trade or anything like that, let alone intermarry. What is a kinsman redeemer? Can anybody tell me? No? Kinsman redeemer was a person who stood in for a person who had died without having children. We have at least two examples in the Old Testament of this. One is Tamar, who ended up being widowed twice without having any children, and someone had to come along and be her kinsman redeemer. In the case of Ruth, she is a childless widow as well, and the redeemer is going to marry her, and then their eldest child is going to be as though he belonged to her first husband. This is important because the land is in the family, and land is your wealth, land is your food. So it's really important. And it means that that first son carries on the lineage as if he were the first husband's child. All right, let's turn to Ruth. And I'm not sure if you can read this. I was hoping we could read it together. So, now it came, shall we read? Now it came to pass in the days when the judges ruled that there was a famine in the land, and a certain man of Bethlehem, Judah, went to sojourn in the country of Moab, he, his wife, and his 2 sons. And the name of the man was Elimelech, and the name of his wife Naomi, and the name of his 2 sons, Mahlon and Chilion, Ephrathites of Bethlehem, Judah. And they came into the country of Moab and continued there. Now, to give you an idea of how long it will take them to get to Moab, it's approximately 100 kilometres. So going by a donkey cart, maybe they're on the road for 1, 2, maybe up to 3 nights. And Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died, and she was left, and her 2 sons. The 2 sons took them, read with me, wives of the women of Moab. The name of the one was Orpah, and the name of the other Ruth, and they dwelled there about 10 years. And Mahlon and Chilion died also, both of them, and the women were left with her 2 sons and her husband. Then she rose with her daughters-in-law that she might return from the country of Moab, for she had heard in the country of Moab how the Lord had visited his people in giving them bread. Wherefore she went out of the place where she was, and her 2 daughters-in-law with her, and they went on the way to return unto the land of Judah. So here we have a little tiny family, Elimelech, Naomi, Chilion and Mahlon. And when I was much, much younger, I always thought that these 2 boys were boys, kids, not very old at all. But they must have been teenagers or perhaps young adults, because you don't suddenly get married from, say, 7 or 8 years old, do you? So they've gone down to Moab because there was a famine in Bethlehem at the time. So it was a place to be kept alive, keeping themselves alive. But when Elimelech first dies, Naomi has now become a widow. Now, to put that into context, that means she's now going to rely on her 2 sons for sustenance to keep her alive. No such thing as social security. And then they get married. Well, hopefully there will be children from these 2 marriages, but there aren't. And when Chilion and Mahlon now die, Not only is Naomi widowed, she's childless. Not only that, her daughters-in-law are both widowed and they are childless. 3 women on their own. Who is going to look after them? So they look after each other for a little while, and then, oh God, there's lovely news. Moab doesn't have to be their home anymore. They can go back to Bethlehem because food is now available there. Now, we said that they would take somewhere between 1 and 3 days to go down to Moab from Bethlehem by donkey cart. They probably took 7 to 10 days to go back on foot. So we've got 3 ladies going up towards Bethlehem. Please read from what we've got now on the screen. Naomi said to her 2 daughters-in-law, "Go, return each to her mother's house. The Lord deal kindly with you as ye have dealt with the dead and with me." What's their response? "The Lord grant you that ye may find rest, each of you in the house of her husband." Then she kissed them, and they lifted up their voice and wept. They were very sad. Then they said to her, "Surely we will return with thee unto thy people." Naomi said, "Turn again, my daughters. Why will ye go with me? Are there yet any more sons in my womb, that they may be your husbands? Turn again, my daughters, go your way, for I am too old to have a husband. If I should say, I have hope, if I should have a husband also tonight, and should also bear sons, would ye tarry for them till they were grown? Would ye stay for them from having husbands? Nay, my daughters, for it grieveth me much for your sakes that the hand of the Lord is gone out against me. And they lifted up their voice and wept again. And Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clave unto her. And she said, Behold, thy sister-in-law is gone back unto her people and unto her gods. Return thou after thy sister-in-law. And Ruth said, Entreat me not to leave thee, or to return from following after thee. For whither thou goest, I will go, and where thou lodgest, I will lodge. Thy people shall be my people, and thy God my God. Where thou diest, will I die, and there will I be buried. The Lord do so to me, and more also, if aught but death part thee and me. I've paused, letting it sink in. Have you ever heard such an amazing declaration? When she, meaning Naomi, saw that she, meaning Ruth, was steadfastly minded to go with her, then she left speaking unto her. So the 2 of them went until they came to Bethlehem, and it came to pass, when they went to Bethlehem, that all the city was moved about them, and they said, Is this Naomi? And she said unto them, Call me not Naomi, for Naomi means pleasant. Call me Mara, for Mara means bitter. For the Almighty hath dealt very bitterly with me. I went out full, and the Lord hath brought me home again empty. Why then call me Naomi, seeing the Lord hath testified against me, and the Almighty hath afflicted me? So Naomi returned, and Ruth Moabitess, her daughter-in-law, with her, which returned out of the country of Moab, and they came to Bethlehem in the beginning of barley harvest. And Naomi had a kinsman of her husband's, a mighty man of wealth of the family of Elimelech, and his name was Boaz. I'm glad you're still with me. And Ruth the Moabitess said unto Naomi, Let me now go to the field and glean ears of corn after him in whose sight I shall find grace. And Naomi said to her, Go, my daughter. Now this next picture is a slide that shows that should have been the other way around, a slide that shows a picture of what the gleaning would have been like in biblical times. So you have the reapers going down with their sickles and catching all the grain as much as possible. But inevitably, some of the grain would fall on the ground. And so these gleaners would come along, the people who were poor, the widows, the orphans, they would come along and they would pick up the grain. Can you imagine how much grain it would take, how much effort it would take to fill a bucket? Few grains at a time. Now, approximately this much, where if you can see where my finger is about 2 litres. That's enough for 2 people for 5 days. Okay? In the Bible, it's called an ephah. And an ephah is 1/10 of an omer, I think it is, and that is enough for 1 person for 1 day. So this much is enough for the 2 women for 5 days. So it's quite a lot of food. They're not going to starve in a hurry. So she went and gleaned in the field and after the reapers, and there she was. Now, we know that there's no such thing as a coincidence, but she happens to come across the field of Boaz, who is the kindred of Elimelech. And behold, Boaz came out from Bethlehem and said to the reapers, "The Lord be with you." And they answered, "The Lord bless you," a common greeting of the day. Then said Boaz to his servant that was set over the reapers, "Whose damsel is this?" Now you can imagine from this wording that Ruth was very young still, even though she had been married before. She may have been married as young as 15 or 16. The servant that was sent over the reapers answered and said, "It is the Moabitish damsel that came back with Amy out of the country of Moab." And she said, "I pray you, let me glean and gather after the reapers are among the sheaves." So she came and hath continued even from the morning until now, that she tarried a little in the house. Then said Boaz unto Ruth, "Hearest thou not, my daughter? Go not to glean in another field, neither go from hence, but abide here by my maidens. Let thine eyes be on the field that they do reap, and go thou after them. Have I not charged the young men that they shall not touch thee?" Now, why is this important? She's from Moab. She's fair game. All right, we'll say no more. "And when thou art athirst, go unto the vessels and drink of that which the young men have drawn." Then she fell on her face and bowed herself to the ground and said to him, "Why have I found grace in your eyes, that thou shalt take knowledge of me, seeing as I am a stranger?" And Boaz answered and said unto her, "It has been fully shown me all that thou hast done unto thy mother-in-law since the death of thine husband, and how thou hast left thy father and thy mother, and the land of thy nativity, and now have come to a people which you did not know before. The Lord compensate thy work, and a full reward be given to thee of the Lord God of Israel, under whose wings thou art come to trust." Then she says, "Let me find favour in thy sight, my Lord, for thou hast comforted me, for thou hast spoken friendly unto thine handmaid, though I not be like one of the handmaidens." Boaz says to her, "At mealtime come thou hither and eat of the bread. Dip thy morsel in the vinegar." And she sat beside the reapers, and he reached her parched corn, and she did eat, and was sufficed, and left. And when she was risen up to glean, Boaz commanded his young men, saying, "Let her glean even among the sheaves, and reproach her not. And let some fall among the handfuls on purpose for her, and leave them, that she may glean them, and rebuke her not." So she gleaned in the field until even, and beat out that which she had gleaned, which was about an ephah of barley, which, as I said before, is enough for 5 days of worth of food for the 2 ladies. She took it up, went into the city. Her mother-in-law saw what she had gleaned, and she brought forth and gave it to her that she had reserved after she was sufficed. So after she's eaten her lunch, she's kept some back so that Naomi can eat straight away. Her mother-in-law said to her, "Where hast thou gleaned today? And where wroughtest thou? Blessed be he who did take knowledge of thee." And she shewed her mother-in-law with whom she had wrought, and said, "The man's name with whom I wrought today is Boaz." And Naomi said unto her daughter-in-law, "Blessed be he of the Lord, who has not left off his kindness to the living and to the dead." Naomi said to her further, "The man is of near kin unto us, one of our next kinsmen." And Ruth the Moabite says, "He said to me also that thou shalt keep fast by my young men until they have ended all my harvest." And Naomi said to Ruth, her daughter-in-law, "It is good, my daughter, that thou go out with his maidens, that they meet not in any other field." So she kept fast by the maidens of Boaz to glean unto the end of the barley harvest and of the wheat harvest, and dwelt with her mother-in-law in Bethlehem. Then Naomi, her mother-in-law, said to her, "My daughter, shall I not seek rest for thee, that it may be well for thee? And now is not Boaz of our kindred, with whose maidens thou wast? Behold, he winnoweth barley tonight in the threshing floor." Winnowing is separating the grain from the chaff so that you can only sell the grain. That's the only good thing in the marketplace. And he's going to stay on the threshing floor so that no one's going to be able to come successfully to steal it. "Wash thyself, therefore," says Naomi to Ruth, "and anoint thee, and put thy raiment upon thee, and get thee down to the floor. But make thyself not known to the man, and he shall have until he has done eating and drinking. And it shall be, when he lieth down, that thou shalt mark the place where he shall lie. And thou shalt go in and uncover his feet, and lay down, and he will tell thee what to do." Why do you think he's doing all of this? Why is Ruth being told by Naomi what this is all about? This is actually a proposal of marriage. Do you get the gist? A person from Moab is proposing to a very wealthy man of Israel. And she said to her, "All that thou sayest unto me, I will do." She went down to the floor and did according to all that her mother-in-law bade her. And when Boaz had eaten and drunk, his heart was merry. He went down to lie at the end of the heap of corn. And she came softly, uncovered his feet, and lay down. And it came to pass at midnight that the man was afraid and turned to himself. And behold, a woman lay at his feet. And he said, "Who art thou?" She answered, "I am Ruth, thine handmaid. Spread therefore thy skirt over thine handmaid, for thou art a near kinsman." And he said, "Blessed be thou of the Lord, my daughter, for thou hast showed more kindness in the latter than at the beginning, inasmuch as thou followest not young men, whether rich or poor. And now, my daughter, fear not. I will do to thee all that thou requirest, for all the city of my people doth know that you are a virtuous woman. And now it is true that I am thy near kinsman. Howbeit, there is a kinsman nearer than I. Tarry this night, and it shall be in the morning that if he will perform unto thee the part of kinsman, well, let him do the kinsman part. But if he will not do the part of the kinsman to thee, then I will do the part of a kinsman to thee, as the Lord liveth. Lie down until the morning." So she lay down at his feet until the morning. She rose up before one could know another. And so, in other words, it's still too dark to see who's there. And he said, "Now let not it be known that a woman came to the floor. Also," this is Boaz speaking, "bring the veil that thou hast upon thee, and hold it." And when she held it, he measured 6 measures of barley and laid it on her, and she went into the city. 6 measures of barley is a lot. I had a little bit of an investigation, and again, scholars are not going to be agreeing on how much 6 measures of barley are. Somewhere between 30 and 40 kilograms is their best estimate. But if 2 kilograms is going to feed them for 5 days, 6 measures is going to feed them for a minimum of 2.5 months. It's a generous gift. When she came to her mother-in-law, she said, "Who art thou, my daughter?" And she told her all that the man had done to her. And she said, "These 6 measures of barley gave he to me, for he said to me, Go not empty until thy mother-in-law." Then said she, "Sit still, my daughter, until thou knowest how the matter will fall. For the man will not be in rest until he has finished the thing this day." Then went Boaz up to the gate and sat him down there. And behold, the kinsman of whom Boaz spake came by, unto whom he said, "Ho, such a one, turn aside, sit down here." And he turned aside and sat down. Then he took 10 men of the elders of the city and said, "Sit ye down here." And they sat down. He said to the kinsman, "Naomi, that is come again out of the country of Moab, selleth a parcel of land, which was our brother Elimelech's. And I thought to advertise thee, saying, Buy it before the inhabitants and before the elders of my people. If thou wilt redeem it, redeem it. But if thou wilt not redeem it, then tell me, that I may know, for there is none to redeem it beside thee, and I am after thee." And the kinsman told Boaz, "I will redeem it." However, there is a little bit of a condition, isn't there, to the land? Then said Boaz, "What day thou buyest the field of the hand of Naomi, thou must buy it also of Ruth the Moabitess, the wife of the dead, to raise up the name of the dead upon his inheritance." And the kinsman said, "I cannot redeem it for myself, lest it mar my own inheritance. Redeem thou my right to thyself, for I cannot redeem it." Now this was the manner in former time in Israel concerning redeeming and concerning changing. For to confirm all things, a man plucked off his shoe and gave it to his neighbour. And this was a testimony in Israel. To put it into modern parlance, exchanging a signed contract. Therefore the kinsman said unto Boaz, "Buy it for thee." So he drew off his shoe. And Boaz said unto the elders and to all the people, "Ye are witnesses to this day that I have bought all that was Elimelech's and all that was Kilion's and Mahlon's of the house of Naomi. Moreover, Ruth the Moabitess, the wife of Mahlon, have I purchased to be my wife, to raise up the name of the dead upon his inheritance, that the name of the dead be not cut off from among his brethren and from the gate of his place. Ye are witnesses of this day." And all the people that were in the gate and the elders said, "We are witnesses. The Lord make the woman that is come into thine house like Rachel and like Leah." Do we remember who Rachel and Leah were? They were the wives of Jacob, who later became Israel. Leah had 6 of the patriarchs, Rachel had 2. The Lord make the did build the house of Israel, and do thou worthily in Ephratah, and be famous in Bethlehem. And let thy house be like the house of Pharez, whom Tamar bore unto Judah, of the seed which the Lord shall give thee of this young woman. So Boaz took Ruth, she was his wife, and when he went into her, the Lord gave her conception, and she bare a son. And the woman said to Naomi, "Blessed be the Lord, which hath not left thee this day without a kinsman, that his name may be famous in Israel. And he shall be unto thee a restorer of thy life, a nourisher of thine old age. For thy daughter-in-law, which loveth thee, which is better to thee than 7 sons, hath borne him." Naomi took the child, laid it in her bosom, and became nurse to it. And the woman, her neighbours, gave it a name, saying, "There is a son born to Naomi." And they called his name Boabed. He is the father of Jesse, the father of David. Now, if we just skip right down to the very end of the chapter, we'll just go back. There we are. Obed begat Jesse, Jesse begat David, and we could continue, could we not? David begat Solomon, and Solomon went and begat somebody else and somebody else and somebody else, and so on down in generations until we get to Jesus. So my question to you in 2026, how would a widowed, childless migrant be treated now? Now, of course, she could go to Centrelink and get some assistance that way. But even if she's not a widowed, childless female, how would we treat a foreigner coming to Geelong? Would we show them, for example, the places where we frequent, the best places to shop? Would we advise them it's not such a good idea to go down to a certain spot after dark? Would we explain how the Myki system works and the transport, that there's a bus that can take you down to the airport, that there's a train that can take you to Melbourne, or you can take it a different way to Warrnambool? How would we treat somebody who came in who was brand new, either to Australia or to Geelong? Do we have any customs by which females can propose marriage in 2026? At my age now, looking back over a whole half century, I can see that this society that I live in has changed a lot. Sometimes for the better, sometimes not quite so much. One of the things that we have seemed to have lost as a society, and I'm not trying to pin this down onto anybody of faith, please don't think that, but we're only a minority in this country. I don't know if you realise that. Australia is no longer a majority of Christian people. There are more people who are identifying as non-Christian than there are Christian, according to the 2021 census. Very sad. But when I was a child, we would say uncle and aunt to people who were very close to our parents instead of Mr. and Mrs. We would never dream of talking to a teacher without saying Mr. or Mrs. as a title. We gave automatic respect to people because of their position in society. Now, I will accept that there is no reason to give absolute trust and respect just because they hold a position in society. I'm just sharing what it was like 50 years ago. What I'm suggesting now in 2026 is that we've lost a lot of those traditions and mores and customs. We tend to have laissez-faire, very casual. So I'm not so sure that we really mind if females propose to men. Just putting it out there. Boaz reminds us of Jesus. In this respect, he was the kinsman redeemer. We need a kinsman redeemer. We need Jesus to have been human. An alien, someone who's not human, is not going to be our kinsman redeemer. Just the way it is. Kinsman means same as us. Foreigner. Ruth weds into God's people. This is a land God has told them don't have anything to do with Moab. And yet we have a Moabitess in the lineage of Jesus. And how about us? Do people glimpse their Redeemer, Jesus, in us? Now, for myself, I'm not talking about anybody else in this room. For myself, I can say, quite honestly, there are times when you would think that I was not a Christian. I will not tell you my behaviour because I think that's inappropriate. However, you would not think I was Christian. Other times, yes. I'm not asking, this is a rhetorical question. I'm not expecting an answer. I'm only putting it out there so that you can have a think about it. What about you? Do you represent Jesus 10% of the time fairly? Are you a good ambassador 50% of the time? Do you do your best most of the time? Let's pray about representing Jesus fairly.